I want to thank everyone and welcome you for joining the FY 2024 pre-application information session for the Strengthening Culturally Specific Campus Approaches to Address Domestic Violence, Dating Violence, Sexual Assault, and Stalking Initiative. My name is Kimberly Schamberger, and I am a grant management specialist and member of the Campus Culturally Specific Campus Approaches to Address Domestic Violence, Dating Violence, Sexual Assault, and Stalking Initiative Unit. My co-presenters for today are Maria Cristina Pacheca Alcala and Grant Management Specialist Veronica Marut. The purpose of the pre-application information session is to highlight a few key points in the solicitation. However, it is not the intent, nor is it enough time to go over every aspect of the solicitation. I would like to introduce the team. Our supervisor and associate director, Latanisha Lewis, our wonderful support staff and grant management specialist, Essence Dickens, Jessica Neal, Yolanda Quintanilla, Veronica Marut, Maria Cristina Pacheca Alcala, and myself, Kimberly Schamberger. Next slide. The agenda for this session covers eligibility requirements, key submission information, program information, federal award information, and application components and tips for submissions. Next slide. The Strengthening Culturally Specific Campus Approaches to Address Domestic Violence, Dating Violence, Sexual Assault, and Stalking Initiative, here as we also call the CSC initiative, is authorized by 34 USC 20125 as a set-aside of the campus of the grants to reduce domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking on campus program. The statute, the campus program funding must ensure the ethical distribution of grants to tribal colleges and universities, historically Black colleges and universities, and as a result of the FY 2022 Violence Against Women Act, VAWA reauthorization, a new set-aside of 10% is designed for HBCUs. In addition, the FY 22 Consolidated Appropriations Act created a 50% set-aside for HBCUs, TCUs, and Hispanic Serving Institutions, HSIs. To support HBCUs, TCUs, and HSIs in strengthening their institutional response to domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking, OVW launched this CSC initiative. Our acting director, Allison Randall, states that one of OVW's top priorities is to improve our outreach and services to underserved communities. We recognize that HBCUs, HSIs, and TCUs face unique issues and challenges in preventing and responding to campus violence. And we're honored to work with grantees in 2024 and in the years to come to support survivors. Next slide. Before we begin, remember that all applicants are responsible for reading the FY 2024 Strengthening Culturally Specific Campus Approaches to Address Domestic Violence, Dating Violence, Sexual Assault, and Stalking CSC initiative and the OVW Solicitation Companion Guide to ensure that a complete application is submitted. The OVW staff cannot comment on the quality of the applicant's proposed project or provide any information outside of what is included in the solicitation. However, our staff will be available to respond to questions about the application requirements throughout the period of the solicitation while it is open. Please refer and please feel free to send any questions to our CSC initiative mailbox at ovw.culturallyspecificcampus@usdoj.gov. At the end of the pre-app call, the PowerPoint and script will be available on OVW's website, and a link to the recorded webinar will be available within 14 days. But before we start, it might be helpful to have the CSC initiative solicitation in front of you as a point of reference or to take notes during the information session. There will seem like a lot of information to cover, so we will take all of your questions at the end of the presentation. So please feel free to write them down, but please hold them to the very end. We may be unable to address all of the information included in the PowerPoint. However, all of the slides will be posted for your reference. We ask that you submit all of your questions in the chat box to ensure we can capture all the questions. We will read the question aloud so all participants know which questions we are responding to. We will also try to repeat the question if it has already been answered so that you all will have an understanding and all that your attention to the questions and answers are important. Lastly, please be patient and don't jump ahead to ask your questions if they had not been covered yet, as we have lots of information to share and there will be opportunities to ask at the end. Next slide. Now we will begin to discuss the programmatic areas of the CSC initiative. The CSC initiative will focus on building the capacity of HBCUs, HSIs, and TCUs to establish culturally relevant strategies for addressing domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking, including the development of effective response protocols and prevention programming. Next slide. The CSC initiative has 13 areas that are listed within our solicitation. You will be able to find these on pages 6 and 7. All applicants must select at least one purpose area in their submission. Please note that purpose areas 4, 6, and 7 have additional requirements. If an applicant chooses to provide legal services under the purpose area, they must submit the delivery of legal assistance certification. Purpose areas 6 and 7 cannot make up for most of the budget or project activities. Since the program's goal is to build the institution capacity to provide comprehensive approaches to these crimes, These purpose areas cannot be the only selected purpose areas. If your proposal includes items in purpose areas 6 or 7, then if awarded, approval must be granted by OVW before the purchase of any items. Costs related to the purpose areas may be included in the application's budget. Next slide. Next slide. OVW does not fund activities that jeopardize victim safety or prevent physical or emotional healing for victims, or allow offenders to escape responsibility for their actions. The solicitation companion guide contains a list of these activities, which you can find on page 7 of your solicitation. Applications that propose activities that compromise victim safety and recovery or undermine offender accountability may receive a point deduction during the review process or could possibly be eliminated for consideration. Next slide. Some examples of activities that compromise victim safety are failing to develop policies regarding confidentiality of information, informed consent, and mandatory reporting, project designs and budgets that fail to account for the accountability needs of individuals with disabilities, individuals that are limited in English proficiency, or who are deaf or hard of hearing. Now we will cover details on the federal award information. Next slide. The grant award period is for 48 months, beginning on October 1st, 2024, and ending on September 30th, 2028. Applicants should submit applications in a budget that reflects this period. Awards under this initiative will be made up to $500,000. All awards are subject to availability of appropriate funds or additional requirements that may be imposed by law. The anticipated number of awards is 25, and the anticipated total amount to be awarded under the CSC initiative is $12.5 million. OVW has this discretion to award for greater or lesser amounts than requested and negotiate the scope of the work and budget with applicants prior to making an award. Next slide. All applications will be considered new to this new initiative. New applications are those who have never received funding under the grants program. Please note that partners on a campus program award from 2020 to FY 2023 are not eligible to apply as the lead applicant or as a partner recipient on the 2024 proposal. In addition, institutions that receive a campus program award from FY 2020 to FY 2023 are not eligible to apply. It is important to note that CSC initiative applicants may apply for the regular FY 2024 campus program and the CSC initiative, but would not receive an award under both. Next slide. Now I will pass this along to my colleague, who will cover the next remaining slides.
Let's review the eligibility requirements. Next slide. Who is eligible to apply to grant funding? Eligibility is mentioned on the cover of the solicitation, as well as on pages 13 to 14. Eligibility for the CSC initiative is limited for institutions of higher education that are Hispanic serving institutions, historically Black colleges and universities, and tribal colleges and universities. If you are an emerging institution, then the campus is not eligible. Other minority serving institutions are not eligible for funding. Institutions that are not one of these three types are not eligible. Next slide. All applicants under the CSC initiative must submit 2 certification letters. The letters must be submitted on institution letterhead, signed and dated by the highest authorizing official. For example, president, chancellor, provost, or a designee with similar authority for the institution. Certification of eligibility. All applicants must certify in writing that they follow Section 485F of the Higher Education Act of 1965 as amended, which requires that all eligible institutions of higher education collect and report certain types of information about campus crime statistics and campus security policies for their respective campuses. Applicants that fail to submit the certification of eligibility or do not include the appropriate signatory will not be considered for funding. Certification of statutory minimum requirements. All applicants must certify that they have knowledge of and are committed to the full implementation of each of the statutory minimum requirements of the CSC initiative. A sample certification of eligibility and sample for certification of statutory minimum requirements can be found on the OVW website. If an application is missing the certification of statutory minimum requirements letter at the time of submission, a successful applicant will be required to submit this certification letter prior to receiving an award. The signed certification letter must be uploaded as a separate attachment in Just Grants. If an applicant proposes to provide legal services as part of this project, they must also submit a delivery of legal assistance certification. Next slide. Required partnerships. All applicants are required to partner with a wide variety of departments, offices, and organizations within the institution of higher education and submit an internal memorandum of understanding or IMOU as part of the application. At the minimum, these partners must include the institution of higher education's president or designee, student affairs administrators, CLERIAC compliance officers and campus security authorities, campus-based victim service providers, if applicable, campus law enforcement or public safety personnel, campus housing authorities, if applicable, campus resolution process personnel, including Title IX coordinator, board members, investigators, and adjudicators and hearing officers. Ensuring strategic partnerships is a critical piece to ensuring there is a collaboration and commitment to building the institutional capacity to address domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. Establishing a coordinated community response is one of the minimum requirements, and having a strong diverse foundation that plays a critical role in response and decision-making as it relates to responding to the 4 crimes. Next slide. Now we will discuss key submission information. Applicants should register with SAM, grants.gov, and CHESS Grants by May 16, 2024. Complete applications are due in CHESS Grants by 8:59 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, June 5th, 2024. OVW will not accept late submissions except under limited circumstances, as described on page 27 of the solicitation. Next slide. In addition to the application due date, other important deadlines affect your ability to apply. The cover of the solicitation provides information on registering. Registration includes registering with the System for Award Management, or SAM, and grant.gov systems, and registering with CHESS Grants. Organizations must update or renew their SAM registration at least once a year to maintain an active status. If you have not registered in CHESS Grants, you must register an entity administrator and an application submitter with CHESS Grants before the CHESS Grants deadline. Within 24 hours of CHESS Grants receiving the SF-424 and SFLLL from grants.gov, the applicant will receive an email from Diamond No Reply at usdoj.gov with instructions on creating a CHESS Grants account. Once registered in CHESS Grants, the application submitter will receive an emailed link to complete the rest of the application in CHESS Grants. The entity administrator also must log into CHESS Grants to review and invite the applicant's authorized representative before an application can be submitted. More information on CHESS Grants role is available on the CHESS Grants website. You can find more information related to registration and deadlines on pages 27 and 28 of the solicitation. Next slide. It is important to know that there is a two-step submission process. All CSC initiative applications will be submitted to both grants.gov and CHESS Grants. The first step is to submit the required application for federal assistance standard form SF-24 and the disclosure of lobbying activities form SFLLL in grants.gov. The final deadline for submitting these documents is May 31st. The second step is to submit the entire application, including attachments, to CHESS Grants at chessgrants.usdoj.gov. To be considered timely, the full application must be submitted in CHESS Grants by June 5th, 2024. These deadlines will not be extended, so submitting all required documents is critical. Remember to review the checklist on page 32 of the solicitation to ensure you have submitted all required documents before finalizing your submission. Next slide. Applicants experiencing technical issues with CHESS Grants should contact the OVW CHESS Grants support desk as soon as possible. Please make sure to contact OVW's help desk, which is provided in this PowerPoint and in the solicitation. There is another DOJ CHESS Grants help desk. By reaching out to the OVW help desk will better support your ability to submit a timely application. If you experience any CHESS grants technical issues, ensure that you continue developing the proposal while working to address any problems. Applicants should follow the solicitation guidance regarding technical difficulties. Please refer to page 27 to 28 for more details. Following the guidance will enable you to submit a full proposal by the deadline using an alternate method if necessary. Next slide. For details about the mandatory program requirements, please refer to the complete list on pages 10 to 13 of the solicitation. The description includes the statutory minimum requirements, additional mandatory requirements under the initiative, participation in all OVW-sponsored technical assistance, including trainings and webinars, and a new grantee orientation and specific staffing requirements. All the requirements must be completed by applicants funded under the CSC initiative. During the grant cycle under this program, all grantees will receive free culturally responsive training and technical assistance provided by national experts in the field of campus and domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. The training and technical assistance will consider the intersections and historical context as to how communities uniquely respond to these crimes, how response and support to survivors can include non-traditional healing strategies and family traditions, ensure survivors' autonomy, explore accessibility as well as engagement and outreach efforts from campus personnel. Technical assistance will also be provided on how to address student-specific populations in campus efforts, understand the distinctions among students and how it shapes their experiences, and provide resources. Student-specific populations could be, for example, Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Latinos, Latinos born in the States, LEP, other disabilities, LGBTQIA+. And finally, understand the intersections of faith and experiencing services for DVSAS, amongst others. Next slide. If awarded, applicants will be required to engage in an intensive structured process to build the infrastructure to create comprehensive program to address domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking on campus that is grounded in a culturally specific strategies. The first mandatory requirement is to create the coordinated community response approach to address domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking on campus, which includes at minimum a CCR team. A CCR team is a multidisciplinary team of campus and community partners who meet regularly to assess, plan, and monitor campus prevention and response efforts. The purpose of the CCR team is to engage key stakeholders to cultivate a collective leadership approach to developing trauma-informed, culturally relevant, multidisciplinary, and coordinated efforts to prevent and respond to domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. The second mandatory requirement is to establish a mandatory prevention program about domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking for all students.
The following requirement is to train all campus law enforcement, campus safety, security, to respond effectively to domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. The last mandatory statutory requirement is to train all participants in the resolution process, including the Campus Disciplinary Board, the Title IX Coordinator's Office, and the Student Conduct Office, to respond effectively to situations involving domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking. Next slide. Additional mandatory requirements are described on pages 12 and 13 of the solicitation. By the end of the project, the grantee must provide comprehensive, confidential victim services and advocacy, either through an off-campus victim service provider that is part of the CCR team, or through the development of a campus-based victim services program. If an applicant anticipates a need to develop a campus-based victim services program, then it should allocate 20% of its budget to this purpose. On-campus counseling services alone do not meet the requirement to provide comprehensive victim services either on or off campus. Another requirement is collecting and reporting performance indicators, which is providing through the submission of performance reports. Grantees are also required to develop an action plan that provides concrete activities to build the grantee's infrastructure to establish a culturally specific program grounded in culturally relevant strategies. The development of an action plan with concrete activities should be discussed within your CCR team meetings. The designated financial point of contact must complete the DOJ Grants Financial Management online training if they have not completed in the last 2 years, and submit the corresponding evidence in Just Grants. Lastly, grantees must support a project director who is at least 75% of a full-time position. Next slide. The summary data sheet should be 1 to 4 pages long, single or double spaced. The summary data sheet does not count towards the 15-page limit of the proposal narrative. Several of the items in this section are required for every applicant for OVW funding, and therefore may not be obviously relevant or drafted explicitly for this initiative. Applicants should provide the most accurate answers. Responses to these items alone will not result in removal from consideration or determine eligibility for any funding prioritized described in the solicitation for this program. This information is used during the initial review of the application. More information is available on page 18 and in Appendix D, which starts on page 52 of the solicitation. Next slide. Proposal narrative. The purpose of the proposal should describe the campus community at large, including the main culturally specific population the applicant serves based on the institution designation, HBCU, HSI, or TCU, and the scope of the problem with regard to domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. Common mistakes we see in applications are that applicants include too much information in this section or information that is irrelevant to the proposed project, or not enough information to respond to what is being asked. In the Who Will Implement section, The proposal must provide information about the applicant's structure to support the initiative, including campus leadership and identified departments on the project, as well as the experience and expertise of the staff that will supervise the project. This section also needs to identify the departments and/or community partners that will support project activities to ensure efforts are accessible to individuals with disabilities, individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing, and persons with limited English proficiency. The proposal narrative does not include a section describing proposed activities because grantees will spend the project period carrying out the intensive structured process to build the infrastructure for a comprehensive program to address domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking on campus. More guidance can be found on page 19 of the solicitation. Next slide. For the proposal narrative, applicants must follow specific formatting and technical requirements, which can be found on page 17. The requirements include specifics on the size of the paper, margin, font, size, the total number of pages, format to upload the document, and how to identify the sections of the solicitation. As a reminder, the proposal narrative has a 15 pages limit. Next slide. The budget detail worksheet and the budget narrative. The applicant must attach to Just Grants a detailed budget and budget narrative for all applicable cost categories. The narrative must describe each line item requested in the budget and explain all costs included in the budget, including how the cost of goods and services are determined and how they will fulfill the objectives of the project. There are a few things to remember before we turn it over to discuss the grant's financial management division section. Number one, the required time to support at least 75 full-time equivalents for the project director. Number two, the required allocation for technical assistance training, $30,000 and $40,000 for applicants in the territories. Number three, no more than 20% for indirect costs, modified total direct costs. Number four, set aside of $40,000 to compensate at least one victim service provider within the community or tribe where the institution is located. Number five, if the institution anticipates a need to develop a campus-based victim services program, it should allocate 20% or more of grant funds to support direct victim services. And number six, support sufficient funds to provide language access for persons with limited English proficiency and to provide access for people with disabilities or who are deaf, hard of hearing. Next slide. Unallowable cost. The cost associated with the following activities included on page 22 of the solicitation are unallowable and must not be included in the budget. Lobbying, fundraising, purchase of real property, physical modifications to buildings, including minor renovations like painting or carpeting, construction, and tuition reimbursement instead of salary for project staff. Next slide. In the next couple of slides, we are going to focus on aspects of your application that relate to the documents that our financial team, the Grants Financial Management Division, reviews. More specifically, we'll discuss some items that GFMD has identified from prior year's applications that could help with expediting our review process. So for today, we are going to highlight certain aspects of the pre-award risk assessment and provide you with a link to a detailed webinar on how to develop the budget that will be included in your application. First, we'll highlight the items identified in the data requested with the application, which is completed by all applicants in a survey in Just Grants. A list of questions included in the survey appear at the end of the solicitation under the heading Survey Questions. Applicants should click on the survey name Pre-Award Risk Assessment to access and complete the survey in Just Grants. Specifically, two items we would like to discuss are the single audit response and the IRS three-step safe harbor procedure. OVW requests that all applicants provide a statement as to whether they have expended $750,000 or more in federal funds during their last fiscal year. If they have, then they indicate that and specify the end date of their last fiscal year. However, GFMD is finding that applicants do not always include all of this information. Please ensure that this question is answered in its entirety and on the data requested with the application survey. Question number 3. Another item that we'd like to highlight from the solicitation is specifically for nonprofit organizations. If you use the IRS three-step safe harbor procedure to determine your executive compensation, you are required to provide a disclosure letter. Note that there are 4 required parts of this disclosure letter. The sample letter provided outlines all 4 parts of the disclosure. So please be sure to follow the sample and provide a response to each of the 4 pieces. The next item we'd like to discuss is the pre-award risk assessment survey, which assists GFMD during its pre-award risk assessment review for all applicants. Each applicant must prepare a response to all 11 questions, and each question has multiple parts. We've noticed from prior years that applicants do not always fully answer all parts of the questions, which in turn requires GFMD to reach out to the applicant and which may delay funding decisions. Some of the most common issues that we've encountered have been, for example, question number 2, where the applicant indicates that they do indeed have internal policies, but they don't provide a brief list of topics covered in the policies and procedures. On question number 3, some applicants fail to provide a summary of the organization's process for tracking expenditures, and more specifically, whether it tracks budgeted versus actual expenditures. These are just a few examples, but in general, please make sure that you read each piece of each question and provide a full and comprehensive response. Next slide. This next slide will quickly highlight some resources that are available as you are creating the budget to be submitted with your application. Over the last couple of years, GFMD has developed a detailed webinar presentation on how to develop a budget to be submitted with OVW applications. This presentation addresses some of the challenges that you may face with your budget and provides some insight into OVW's budget review process. This webinar can be found at the link on this slide. Next up is the uniform guidance, which can be found at 2 CFR 200, and you may use your favorite search engine for this one. Other resources include the DOJ Financial Guide and the solicitation itself. Next slide. We know this can be a lot of information to process, so if you have any questions about GFMD information discussed, please feel free to contact GFMD Help Desk at 888-514-8556 or via email at obw.gfmd@usdoj.gov. Next slide. Memorandum of Understanding. For the purposes of this solicitation, the IMOU is a document representing a partnership with different departments, offices, and entities within the institution of higher education. Please see the mandatory initiative requirements section of the solicitation. The applicant must provide an IMOU that is current, dated during the development of the proposal, and includes signatures, titles, and dates from all partners. The IMOU must be a single document signed and dated by the authorized representative of the higher education institution. Example, the president, provost, or chancellor. And the chief executive officers and or directors of all participating partner entities within the institution. OVW will accept electronic signatures. IMOU's missing signatures may result in a point deduction or removal from consideration. If necessary, an IMOU can include multiple signature pages so long as each page includes the names and titles of all signatories to the IMOU. A sample MOU is available on the OVW website. When drafting the internal MOU, remember that there is no page limit for MOUs, so there is no reason to shorten the details required for each criterion. The IMOU has a value of up to 25 points. More guidance for the IMOU can be found on pages 24 and 25 of the solicitation. Next slide. Let's discuss these submission tips. First, each of the components need to be completed and uploaded into Just Grants as shown in this slide. Next slide. The tips on this slide may improve your chances of becoming a CSC Initiative grant recipient. Please note that the following list does not guarantee that your project will be funded, but it is intended to assist you with submitting a strong and responsive application. Read the solicitation. As I have mentioned previously, the applicant must read the solicitation in its entirety. Everything that needs to be included in or with your application is mentioned in the solicitation. and any supporting resources are linked or referenced in the solicitation. Submit all required documents. Be sure that your project narratives and strategies and activities address the areas you have identified in the proposal narrative. A strong application is focused on the crime, the campus needs, and the populations that will be served. It is okay for projects to focus on one crime. It does not increase your chances of being awarded a grant by stating that you will address every crime if your project narrative only provides information on how you will address sexual assault. Use the application checklist on page 32 of the solicitation. This checklist will help you ensure that all required documents are included in your application when you begin submitting. OVW will not reach out for any missing documents nor review documents outside of the final just grant submission prior to the peer review unless you are approved to apply an alternate method. Allow plenty of time to gather the required information. To avoid any possibility of missing the submission deadline, submit your application as far in advance to the deadline as possible. Technical issues may arise, and the number of individuals seeking assistance from just grants may increase on and near the submission date. Make the application easy to read and follow for all the reviewers. One way to assist with the review is to use the heading and subheading titles in the solicitation for each section. Be sure the application and responses to the program requirements and expectations are complete and clearly written. Avoid or limit the use of acronyms. Remember that the reviewers are not familiar with your campus and will not be familiar with the acronyms that your campus and project partners may use. Please print out the application before submitting it to ensure appropriate formatting and adherence to page limit requirements. Also, number the pages in your application. This will help the reviewer track and ensure you are following the solicitation formatting and instructions. Please monitor your inbox if your name and contact information is listed as the point of contact or application submitter in just grants. There are times that the grants.gov and just grants may reject your application, and you will need to make sure you are getting those alerts. Next slide. If you have questions that were not addressed during this call, please feel free to send an email to ovw.culturallyspecificcampus@usdoj.gov. If you have questions regarding the budget, you may send an email to ovw.gfmd@usdoj.gov. Thank you so much for your time today and your interest in the CSC initiative. Now we can open the floor for any remaining questions. Please make sure to send your questions via the chat box, or you may verbally ask your question by raising your hand using the reaction icon at the bottom of your screen.
Thank you, Maria Christina. So I will start with our first question, and it says, thank you. Can you confirm the proposal is a maximum of 15 pages? Yes, our proposal, your proposal should be a maximum up to 15 pages. And also that information is included in the solicitation. The next question asks, if our partnering VSP victim service provider says they only have legal advocates. Do we need to include a delivery of legal assistance certification letter as a part of our submission? This victim service provider will be receiving OVW funds through this program and offers legal advocacy to survivors through the victim advocate position. So with your victim services provider, it would be important to make sure that they are included on your MOU, so that they they will also be receiving funding through the OVW funds. The delivery of legal assistance certification would not be needed just for you to have them, your victim service provider, signed on as a partner.
There's also a question about a requirement of external community MOUs needed. This CSC initiative, you're not required to submit EMOU, external community MOU. So that is not required for this grant. Only IMOU. You would be working on developing an EMOU once you're awarded under this grant. Does that answer your question? Yes, Yolanda, you have your hand raised. You can unmute and let us know.
Okay, thank you. I was trying to unmute. Thank you so much for the information. I really appreciate it. So there was a mention, and it's possible that I could have misheard, about working with external community service providers and victim services providers. I thought I understood. And I just wanted to make sure that I was clear that what you just said was that this was really specific to IMOUs and that it wouldn't be a requirement such as in other grants where you'd have to submit MOUs for external victim services providers with this grant. Does that make sense?
Yes, you are correct. So as a capacity building grant, you're not required to submit an EMOU as a part of application process. However, by the end of the grant, you would have developed an EMOU and identified your external partners.
And so basically those external partners, as we're going through the work to develop out more services, then obviously we would look for community partners that could continue to enhance services in the community.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Okay. All right.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
We have another question in the Q&A box. It reads, the solicitation mentions project supervisor and project director. Can you clarify the distinction between these two roles? The solicitation requires applicants to hire a project director that will dedicate at least 75% of their time to the implementation and oversight of the CSC initiative. The project supervisor would be the person in the institution that would be supervising the project director and that would be responsible for the general oversight of the grant. We have another question in the chat that reads, can you speak on the population specific and cultural specific purpose areas? For example, as a Hispanic serving institution, is culturally relevant programming required for specific populations, or is it an intersectional approach? So these are two areas. For example, as a Hispanic serving institution, one of the areas where we'd like the applicant to focus is on how they are supporting and developing culturally specific comprehensive prevention programming that is relevant for their Latino and Hispanic students. If the institution chooses to also address the priority area of supporting historically marginalized or underserved communities, then they would have like you're stating, an intersectional approach into developing programming and response for Latino students and for that other population that's identified through the priority area.
Thank you. There is also a question. There was a comment that on-campus services would not be sufficient for confidential victim services. If the confidential victim service, so counseling is not sufficient. So if you have a wellness center that only provides counseling, that is not sufficient to meet the requirement of victim services. If you have direct victim services on campus, that would meet part of the requirement. However, you still would need to develop an EMOU with your external community partner. So you would need both. Let me see, what are the other questions? I hope that answers your question. And again, you would develop that partnership during the grant. You do not have to have the partnership developed entering or in the application process. Very clear. Okay, good.
There is another question. Can we describe community partners who will support the needs of the project's identified underserved populations, even if we have had limited conversations with those community partners to date? So those community partners will need to be your community partners who are going to be well informed, like your local police department, your local and community victim service providers, and those community partners will I'm trying to make sure I answer your question correctly.
If I can add, yes, even if there's the initial conversations to establish partnerships, and there are community partners who you like to mention, then yes, they can be added to the narrative portion of the application.
Okay. There's another question. There was a comment about the project director who is at least 75% of a full-time worker. Can we also include salary/pay for graduate student or peer educators that would work with the director as part of the budget? Yes, you can.
Yes.
As well as you can also compensate the supervisor. So yes.
I can take this one because I was the one who provided the previous answer. It says, since we are an HBCU, do we need to identify an additional underserved group within our campus? No, you don't have to. It's not a requirement. We have two more questions in the Q&A. One of them reads, do academic departments of the campus need to be part of the IMOU? That depends on the level of participation and partnership that they may have into supporting the capacity building process of developing the grant in your institution. For example, if you partner with your arts or design department, so they can support you to develop educational campaigns around prevention of the crime, then I would certainly include them in the IMOU.
Okay, another question. Can the project director be a new person that is hired for the grant period, or should they be a person on staff? It can be either or. It can be either a hired new person, or it can be a personnel that you have identified on staff. However, the requirement is that that person has to dedicate at least 75% of their time on the grant. I hope that answers your question. There is a question, are there any examples of full grants that we can review prior to submitting? I don't know if we have any examples of full grants. However, we do have a resource. I can put this here. Let me type into an answer where there are resources of examples of budgets, examples of IMOUs or EMOUs or any of the certifications that need to be submitted. So,
Thank you, Veronica.
mhm.
We have another question that reads, the DOJ grants financial management online training available to work on now. Can I do this weekend? That is a training that's available for grantees, and that is a requirement if you are awarded. So no, that cannot be done now. That would need to be completed if awarded during the grant cycle period.
And if you think of any questions after this presentation and Q&A session, please feel free to email to us and we will get back to you.
Well, I want to thank you all for joining us on this call today. If there are no more questions, we would like to say good luck to you all and review your application very thoroughly and send us any questions that you may have. Thank you all and enjoy the rest of your day and have a great weekend.